Hello, everyone. Can the organizers and presenters hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. All right. Hello, everyone. I am Vicki Healy, and I'd like to welcome you all to today's webinar, which is hosted by the Clean Energy Solutions Center. Today, our webinar is going to be focused on Africa's energy landscape, prospects, status, and challenges. So we're all glad you're here, and again, welcome. Quickly, before we begin, I just have a few housekeeping items to go over. First of all, I wanted to let you know there are two options for listening to the audio. One, you can listen through your computer by selecting the mic and speakers button on the right-hand audio pane, which you should see on your display. And then also you can listen by telephone, and to do that you just need to click on the telephone icon and type in the phone number and access codes that are displayed on your screen. A quick reminder to our panelists to please mute your audio device while you're not presenting, because otherwise we could hear some distracting feedback or background noise. And there is a phone number here for a help desk in case you're having technical difficulties. You would dial, this is a U.S. number, it's 888-259-3826. Let's see, oh, also a couple of other things. Questions, if you have a question, also in the toolbox pane that you will likely see on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see an option that you can click on to ask a question in the questions pane. You can also add a photo if you want to next to your name by dragging and dropping the photo into the attendee pane on your screen. And if you're having trouble viewing this webinar, we will be sending out the presentations and a recorded audio and video of this webinar to you after the webinar is completed. A quick disclaimer, the Clean Energy Solutions Center does not endorse or recommend specific products or services, and the information provided in this webinar is will be featured in the Solutions Center Resource Library as one of many best practice resources reviewed and selected by technical experts. Quickly, just going over the agenda, I just will provide a few opening remarks and an overview of the Clean Energy Solutions Center. And will be followed by two presentations, one by Mr. Adedoyin, Adeleke from ISNAD-Africa, and also one from Dr. Juliette Biao, who's the UN Environment Director and Regional Representative for Africa. So this next slide, just a quick overview of the Clean Energy Solutions Center. We are an initiative of the Clean Energy Ministerial that was launched in 2011. And we provide a high-level global forum to promote capacity building, trainings, policies, and programs that advance clean energy technology. And we do this through many platforms, but including the webinar that you're actually attending today, where we can share some of the lessons and best practices related to clean energy technologies in Africa. Again, the Solutions Center, we're a multilateral initiative of the Clean Energy Ministerial, and we're funded by the governments of Australia, Sweden, and the United States. We receive in-kind support from some of our partner countries, such as Chile. And we are a unique SIM initiative in that we're assisting countries in all regions of the world, strengthening their clean energy policies and finance. And of course, we support transition of clean energy markets and technologies. We have several programs and services we offer, including the webinars that, again, you're attending one of those today. We have a resource library online at cleanenergysolutions.org. And we also provide assistance to governments on clean energy policies, programs, and finance initiatives. We have a team of over 50 experts living and working in different regions and countries around the world that provide this assistance to government policymakers, and other supporting government decisions. We are involved with several international partners, which you see listed on the screen here. I won't go through the list of all of them, but as you can see, we do partner with many international and regional organizations around the world to deliver our technical assistance. With that, just a quick introduction of our speakers today. Our first speaker will be Mr. Adedoyin Adeleke, who is the founder and executive director of International Support Network for African Development. He is from Nigeria and holds a doctoral researcher on sustainable energy under the UNESCO Chair in Energy for Sustainable Development at Politecnico di Milano, Italy. And we will also hear a presentation from Dr. Juliette Biao, who is the UN Environment Director and Regional Representative for Africa. And with that, I will now turn the webinar over to Adedoyin to deliver his presentation. So bear with me for just one moment while I turn the controls over to him.
You're able to see my screen now?
I think it's working on, here we go. Yes, now we see it.
Great. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, good evening, wherever you are joining us from. And let me thank you, especially for joining our webinar and for the interest in the Mentoring for Research program, which you have all applied for, except for some of us that are joining as experts. In this presentation, I'll be presenting the corporate presentation of ISNAD-Africa, what we stand for, what we are doing, and what's our goal, and also to introduce the Mentoring for Research program to you, in addition to what you already know. Yeah, the first is currently we are noticing that in the recent time, there has been global attention, global focus on Africa. A lot of support mechanisms for development in various perspectives, health, education, energy, all of this. However, I want to submit to you that Africa is too rich to be poor. When we read reports from global organizations and we see Africa ranked very low in development indexes in terms of health, education, and so other things like that, many of the African countries, in fact, almost all African countries have a lot of natural resources that would have helped to raise our development index. However, there are many issues. Yeah, we have the huge resources, but we have a very low performance in terms of development. There are a lot of issues on this, but one of the key things which I think, being an energy expert and energy student, you agree with me, is that energy is a driver of development. Energy is a driver of the economy, including social development. Now, so because of our high level of energy poverty, our performances in terms of development and production, industry, and all of this have always been ranking low. But for instance, Sub-Saharan Africa currently ranks as the most electricity poor region in the world. Whereas, if you check many of these, many of these Sub-Saharan African countries, you find that we have abundant energy resources. So while we have the resources, we are still unable to tap into some of this. And somebody will ask me why. There are a number of factors as well. Of course, you're going to talk about the policy issue, the institutional issue, you're going to talk about the finance, and so many other factors like that. But when we looked at it, we discovered that all these things rally around our capacity development. When we talk about appropriate financial models and appropriate policy framework. It is human beings that will design all of this. It is people that are well developed, that have the appropriate skills to meet the requirements for this kind of analysis that will do this. Therefore, we say that capacity development is very crucial for optimum exploitation of the sustainable energy resources on the continent. Now, but unfortunately, Africa, unlike some other developed countries, some the developed countries, we are, for instance, Europe, where you find that they have been able to develop their, upgrade their educational research facilities and system to raise new and updated sustainable energy professionals and researchers. So I mean, many of us, we know that the European countries have limited, I mean, compared to Africa, limited sustainable energy resources. For how many hours in a day do they receive sun? Yet we go to Germany, we go to Italy, we go to France and see what they are doing with solar and what they are doing with wind and what they are doing with some other renewable energy resources. Unlike Africa, where we have abundant resources, where Africa is yet to upgrade its educational research system to meet this. Now, seeing this challenge, we saw that, oh, fine, we have two options. Either we just sit and wait for the international community to keep coming and then support us. We appreciate all of that. But we're also checking, can we also do things for ourselves? And this was the driver, I mean, the motivation to start the International Support Network for African Development, ISNAD-Africa. On a general perspective, our objective is aimed at raising global multi-stakeholder support for clean energy transition and climate resilience in Africa. Of course, we're talking about energy. I was talking about energy, but it's clear that as even if we say, oh, we want to develop our energy sector, but if we continue to use fossil fuel, we're going to be solving a problem, creating another problem. That's climate change and environment issues. That's why we're linking the two. We want to be sure that anything we're supporting, covers clean energy transition and climate resilience. So through various initiatives, ISNAD-Africa seeks to build human capacity for raising new generation of sustainable energy, environment, and climate experts in Africa. We want to facilitate North-South collaborations, that is, developed, simply said, developed and developing countries to facilitate collaborations and partnership that will lead to knowledge transfer. Yes, we appreciate that we have a lot of funding support here and there, though they might still not be enough, but at least we appreciate that we have some. But an area that seems to need more attention for now, that has not been well attended to, is in terms of human support, capacity development, and in the area of knowledge transfer. So this is one thing we are seeking to achieve. We also intend to promote multi-stakeholder partnerships to bridge the gap between education, research, and practice in our thematic areas. Of course, our thematic areas are sustainable energy, environment, and climate change, as you must have seen in our emails. But what we notice is that whereas there are even some that do very fantastic research in Africa, beyond even energy sector, but as you will agree with me as students in Africa, that many of our research papers end as papers. The brilliant ones or the most energetic ones make sure they publish, fine, but nothing to take it further, no implementation, no relevance to the industry. So we're trying to promote, through our initiative, we're trying to promote relationship between various stakeholders, government, NGOs, industries, academia, such that your work as a research student can be taken up for implementation in the industry or by the government for policy formulation and things like that. We also want to increase environmental literacy among various people groups in Africa. This also is very crucial in our mind, and as I will be showing in the subsequent slide, you will see what we're talking about there. And lastly, we want to stimulate and promote innovations and networking in the areas of focus. That's sustainable energy, environment, and climate change. Now, as our flagship program, we have a number of initiatives developed already, but we decided to start with one and then we proceed from there. What we discovered is that, like I said earlier, Africa is here to develop its education and research facility system to raise sustainable energy leaders in the environment as well and climate change. But like you check many of the African universities, in some African countries, you don't find one university degree program that is fully dedicated to energy. Some of you will bear witness to this. Now, but whereas we don't have this, and we cannot approach the Minister of Education in various countries and say, oh, let's start these courses. We noted that there are students who probably through webinars like this, probably through contacts in other countries, learn about sustainable energy, environment, and climate change, and they want to do their research on these topics. But no matter how brilliant these topics are, we have also observed that these topics are most times rejected because their university in their own country does not have researchers to supervise the students. So what we intend to do, because this has been limiting, because these are ideas that students are having that could probably help to develop the African energy landscape, including environmental sustainability, environmental stability, and climate change and mitigation adaptation. So what we develop a model such that we will look for students in various African countries conducting their research in any discipline, arts, sciences, engineering, that want to do their research on sustainable energy. It could be on finance, it could be on policy, or any perspective. And then we look around the world, talk to professionals and researchers in think tanks, government, academia, and international organizations to support the students remotely. And that's why we call it mentoring for research program. It's going to be an online relationship with mentors from different sectors across the globe. And you will wonder, why not just researchers like we often have in Africa? We have noted that many of our research in Africa, like I said before, are conducted in ways that are not relevant for uptake. They're not relevant for implementation. That's why we have involved industry experts, think tanks, and then from the government to help us support research that are industry relevant and problem solving. And of course, we also include technical and soft skill training, which is what we have just begun now, and all of this at low cost, at no cost to the student. Now, the MRP is supposed to, there are two other initiatives coming, integrated into the MRP. That's Mentoring for Research Program. That's an outreach program and then a symposium, which we're still working on that towards next time. Now, and looking at this, we started reaching out to a number of professionals and researchers we are in contact with across the globe, including from World Bank, from Harvard University, IPCC, IRENA, and so many other international organizations, including universities from various countries. We are so pleased to have a number of them, about over 50 of them have expressed interest, and they are very passionate about supporting African students. And when we started this, of course, there are a number of challenges to date that we still face trying to sort this thing out, because this is something we're starting afresh. But we're very encouraged by the global response we got during the 3 weeks that we opened the application. That was December 1st to December 22nd. Within 3 weeks, the program website was visited 17,000 times by 7,500 visitors from 120 countries across the globe. And within this period, we got about 300 applications in 3 weeks from 108 universities and 22 African countries. If we look at all of this, we'll see that this program has received some level of interest that shows that there is an impact to be made. And that's why we also, to start a program, we organize the training, because there is, yes, we want to support students, and there are researchers and professionals across the globe that also want to assist students. But there is a gap which we must bridge. One, we must increase the knowledge of, because many of these students are coming from different backgrounds, engineering, arts, that are not basically on energy programs. We want to increase the knowledge of the students on clean energy transition and climate resilience, and also spur youth. If you look around the world now, you see everything the organizations are doing now. Most organizations are trying to align their objectives towards the sustainable energy goals, and we want to see how students, because as students, we spend most of our time reading. In a laboratory, we might not be able to go on field, go for a lot of SDG programs, but can we also integrate, align our educational research programs to be in line with the sustainable energy development goal, particularly on energy and climate change? This is what we also want to achieve for this training, and also to improve the proficiency of African youth on professional and online communication ethics. For instance, when we're planning this, we know that online communication has not been the order of the day in most of our African universities, particularly the public ones. So many of us still are not used to online communication by email, and you're going to be communicating with global researchers and professionals across the globe. Definitely, it has to be online. And we need to build this ethics, because there are ways you send your mail, just like we receive a number of them. There are ways people send emails and they send as if they are chatting on Instagram or Facebook, which the person receiving the email will feel, oh, this person is insulting, lacks courtesy, and then it cuts off. So we want to also bridge that gap of professional communication ethics. And also, of course, we're going to be having soft and transferable skills training, which we be holding in March. I've also been invited for that. And of course, this training is also introducing the Mentoring for Research program. And what do you expect? Basically, today we're going to be having a topic on Africa's energy landscape, looking at, and what are we saying with that? What we're saying is, okay, like I've just given an overview at the beginning of my presentation, we have these huge resources, we have this low energy, high energy poverty. So what is really the challenge? What is the status of things? How does the energy profile how does Africa rank on energy profile? And what is our potential? Why are we not achieving this potential? Will give us the challenges. And what we want to achieve with this is to inspire you, to expose you to some of these issues and see how you can align your research in this line. Of course, like I said, energy is very related to environment and climate change. So we'll also be looking at environmental sustainability in Africa. We are also working on, you have not been invited for this because we're still working on it. The third one, which is renewable energy development in Africa. There's also another one on climate change in Africa, sustainability, impact, adaptation, and mitigation. We're working on these two. Once we conclude on that, we'll send you an invitation for that. But you have received invitation for the last one, which is essential skills for effective mentoring relationship. Like I've mentioned in my presentation earlier, for you to be able to relate with people at the global level, there are a number of skills you must build, which already we have been seeing that the gaps in some of the emails corresponding we have been receiving from you. So that's why we have invited you for that webinar. And for that, we have a consultant that will be speaking on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adedoyin. That was an excellent presentation and overview on your mentorship program and the training objectives and all of that. It's very much appreciated. So I'm going to take back control of the screen, and I will bring up Dr. Juliette's presentation. Great. Dr. Juliette, can you hear me fine?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. I have your presentation displayed on my screen with the first slide, Energy Landscape in Africa. So I'm ready to begin when you're ready.
Yep. Can I?
Yes. Oh, yes, please proceed. And let me know when you would like me to change slides for you. Okay.
Yeah, for starters, please let me thank you. Thank the organizers of this webinar for inviting me. I'm really honored to be invited to this panel to discuss such an important topic for Africa. After listening to this comprehensive presentation of Adeleke, I don't think that I have really much to say, but my presentation will give you an overview on the energy situation in Africa and not really achieve clean energy promotion alone. We need to bring on board the private sector to maximize energy production for utilization in various production sectors, such as agriculture, that is for food security, health, education. We need harmonization of policy across multiple ministries to ensure they complement the amalgamation of these productive sectors with clean energy value addition. For example, to catalyze investment in clean energy powered value addition, agriculture policies will need to reconcile with industry policies, energy policies, land policies, and private investors to ensure relevant cross-cutting policies that incentivize investment, both state and non-state actors, in plant and clean processing industries near high-potential agro-production areas. Enabling environments are critical to provide greater investor security. Good examples exist in a number of countries and need to be emulated. We have at the UN Environment Office for Africa, a European Union Commission funded large projects on where we have the opportunity to promote agro-value chain while catalyzing energy sector. We can also share those examples. The political will on governmental side is absolutely essential to trigger action by all stakeholders. Another critical point is financing and business models to maximize clean energy development. Africa needs to develop business models for enhancing access to finance and resource development risk mitigation solutions that are both responsive and affordable in order to attract viable investment in the energy sector. Education, mobilizing as well as building capacity. I think that was highlighted by Adeleke. And I believe that adequately empowered and skilled human capacity is an urgent imperative for sustainable energy development in Africa. Partnership, I think it was highlighted by Adeleke as well. Given the linkages between energy, global security, climate change mitigation, and poverty reduction, and the significant economies of scale in the development of renewable energy sources, there is a need for partnership, knowledge sharing, and cooperation to address these global interlinked challenges. There is a need to strengthen regional collaboration through South-South platforms to exchange experience, knowledge, and build skills that are adapted to the need of the continent. And finally, we need institutional transformation. In the African context, the required institutional transformation in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals in terms of clean energy development are mainly to shift focus from policy discourse into proper implementation pathways that could spur a more inclusive access to renewable energy benefits, particularly for the majorities who are in need of acquiring the access to energy. To provide a bridge to leverage the global and regional renewable energy opportunities into local and national policies and socio-economic contexts. I think I should stop there. If there are some questions, I will be able to answer them. I thank you for your attention.
Great. Dr. Juliette, thank you so much for your presentation. And I must apologize to our attendees. I had muted my phone and as such had muted Dr. Juliette for part of the presentation. So please enter your questions that you have for her and also for Adedoyin in the questions pane on your toolbox, and we will get started with questions. And again, I apologize for that. For accidentally muting everyone. So I am looking through the questions pane, and again, I've yet to see any questions regarding the presentations. So if you would like to go ahead and type in your questions for our panelists into the pane, that would be very useful, and we can start on the question and answer session.
Vicky, yes. I think you sent me a question that I have addressed partly in my presentation about the factors on the higher cost of or the lack of institutional access to energy in Sub-Sahara. Yes. Maybe if the question arises again, I will just kind of share my thoughts about how we can improve electricity rates.
Okay, sure. Let me let me pull that question up. Adedoyin, do you happen to have that question handy?
I was thinking that there are two of the slides, the two slides before the last one. I think if she could probably elaborate a bit more on it. I'm not sure we're able to hear around that time.
Let's see. Two slides before the last one, did you say?
Yes.
The slide here on opportunities?
No. So can you slide back? Slide back? No. Yes, I think around challenges, yeah.
Okay.
You want me to repeat the challenges?
Yes, the challenges are the next one. Challenges and opportunities.
Okay. Yeah, challenges. Well, I was saying that one of the challenges Africa faces is about the significant growth in population and the sustained period of economic growth and transformation. And I gave some figures there with the average annual gross domestic product growth rate of 6.2%, predicted threefold growth in gross domestic product by 2030, and sevenfold growth by 2050. This entailed a much larger energy demand and calls for a better performing energy sector. Energy poverty remains a serious obstacle to economic and human development in most parts of the continent. One of the critical challenges related to energy sector is characterized by a lack of access to modern energy services, especially in rural areas. And I mentioned also the poor infrastructure, the low purchasing power, low investment, and over-dependence on traditional biomass to meet basic needs. Another challenge is that the continent's energy supply are not meeting the needs and aspiration of its people. About 600 million people in Africa do not have access to electricity, and approximately 730 million people rely on traditional uses of biomass. And this is where I'm really observing that a better system will promote economic diversification, raise productivity, and improve the health and well-being of citizens. As currently, only 10% of the continent's potential is being utilized. I think at the beginning of my presentation, I provide some figures about the situation that shows that we are not really tapping into the potential that Africa has. Africa requires between 60 billion US dollars and 90 billion US dollars annually to address its energy shortfall, roughly quadruple 2014 investment level. And another challenge is that power companies in Africa are still struggling to produce electricity at the price that people can afford. And that is where I kind of partly respond to the question sent to me by Vicky about why sub-Saharan Africa don't have access to electricity. And I mentioned that there are various factors, including political interference in utility policy. I mentioned also the higher investment costs and lower profitability of extending service to rural areas. I also mentioned that the major factor to wider access is the huge charges consumers must pay to connect the electricity network, and that the connection charges in sub-Saharan Africa are among the highest in the world, which has resulted in low rates of electricity in many countries. Finally, as a challenge, I mentioned that there is inadequate and harmonized enabling environment for accelerating development of biomass energy, such as sustainable charcoal production and consumption value chain. I observe that, there is nothing the public sector alone can do to promote clean energy, that we need to engage with the private sector. And for the private sector to come on board, one of the critical element will be to create enable environment. Then you will have also to kind of mitigate the risk for the private sector and also create incentives. Those are the challenges that in a nutshell I mentioned. Adeleke, I don't know if you still want me to move on to
the opportunities. That would be appreciated. Then I have an issue, a point I also want to bring to your attention. Perhaps you can also address it. But you can look at the opportunities first.
You want me to elaborate on the opportunities?
Yes, that would be great. We'll be grateful to have that.
Yeah. The first element of the opportunity is the vast and diversified renewable energy resources across the continent. And you mentioned that in your presentation, that we have really huge potential and diversify energy resources. I just provided, I provided some figures. In terms of hydropower, we have 1,860 terawatt hours a year that can be tapped into. We have more than 120 terawatt hours a year of geothermal, and 155,000 to 170,000 terawatt hours a year of solar, and biomass 3 to 13.6 exajoules. One opportunity is also the failing technology cost, about targets and pipeline of high quality projects. I also mentioned the existence of international donors, partners, and financial mechanisms such as Scale-up Renewable Energy Program, Climate Investment Facility, Green Climate Fund, Global Environment Facility, African Development Fund, etc. And also emerging financiers such as BRICS countries, Brazil, Russian Federation, India, China, and South Africa. Finally, I mentioned the various global, continental, and regional energy initiatives such as Sustainable Energy for All, the large program on infrastructure development for Africa that is spearheaded by African Union Commission. And we also have African Renewable Energy Initiative, which is African-led initiative and Africa-owned initiative. We have Power Africa, geothermal risk mitigation facilities, etc., etc. So that is what I present shortly on opportunities. Of course, there are other opportunities that I may not have highlighted here.
Thank you very much, ma'am. One thing that yes, that's very much taken. Thank you very much. One thing that we're also looking at is because many times we have already, like I also mentioned in my presentation, we think that people take it for granted that once there is energy access, there will be development. But from various research papers and experiences, we find that energy access, yes, is a driver of the economy. It's going to drive economy, but we find that it does not automatically. Like for instance, we have a village that doesn't have electricity, and then they bring electricity there. It doesn't automatically translate to economic transformation. We found that there is a need for a mechanism, like an economic mechanism, like training the local, the dwellers. I mean, the resident, the people that reside in the community. On various trading opportunities that they can, skills as well, that they can use the energy for productive use. So I don't know if you have probably, if you can expatiate a bit on that. At least energy access does not translate automatically to development. There is need for bringing in other stakeholders to develop the economic status of the community.
Is it a question to me?
No, I just wanted you if you have something to add to that.
I think that I kind of explained that you know, energy is a catalytic sector. Energy alone cannot really ensure development. It's clear.
Yes.
And that has been really discussed during the just to say that you know, clean energy promotion is gaining momentum at the 16th session of the African Ministerial Conference on the environment that gathers all the minister of the environment of the 54 countries. It was held in Gabon last year. And one of the key decisions that were made by the African ministers was about really to promote innovation to accelerate the implementation of the African 2053 agenda. And the clean energy was seen as a value addition of the ecosystem-based adaptation, agro-produce that will not only further incentivize its application, but will also minimize emission sources and help respond to sustainable development goals achieved. For example, let me give you an example that only energy access doesn't mean that we ensure development. That it is a catalytic sector. For example, solar energy can sequester more than 1 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent by 2030. The value addition will create additional higher order jobs along the entire agro value chain. This approach can potentially create up to 17 million jobs along the entire value chain and catalyze an agro sector. This is without adding on to aggregate greenhouse gas emission and pollution while minimizing health risks. So this will contribute directly towards combating poverty and access. So you can see that, you know, just promoting clean energy, there are many of the sustainable development goals that you can address.
Yes.
Yeah. So
yes.
It is not enough just to have access to energy and say that you are ensuring the sustainable development, but that promoting energy can trigger, you know, the promotion of other or in other sectors, and thereby really helping to address the sustainable development goals as a package.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think there are some questions there that from our participants, but I think to summarize, I think what she's saying is that energy access is a catalyst, but like chemistry, there must be something to catalyze. So catalyst itself cannot bring reaction. It only catalyzes reaction. So there must be things to catalyze. So I think there are some questions from the participants.
Okay, great. Adedoyin, I'm going to present the first question to you. Can you hear me okay still? I'm just checking.
Yes, I can.
Okay, very good. This is actually a two-part question. So the first part is, have you included governments in your initiative? And the second part is, do you feel that you African students and others who are trained in the field will find a friendly or accepting environment in their home countries to be able to apply their skills.
Can you repeat the second question?
Yes. So African students who are trained in the field, when they go home to their home countries, do you feel that there will be a good environment within their countries to allow them to apply their skills? In other words, will there be opportunities for jobs and things like that within their home countries after they've been trained and go back to work?
Okay.
To work.
Thank you for that. Let me start from the second one. The sustainable energy subsector, including the environment and climate change, is emerging. Like I used to advise when I was starting up. Let me just probably tell you a very short story. When I finished my BSc and I wanted to do my masters, I wanted to go into energy. But of course, the most lucrative then would have been oil and gas. But I felt, where is the future? The future is in sustainable energy. Yes, it was little then, I mean, compared to now. But yes, I plugged my head into it because I knew that's where, this is where United Nations, World Bank are seriously funding. I think World Bank recently announced that they're going to stop funding oil and gas. They gave a particular year, which is not too far from now. So the opportunities are emerging, not just in your country. Because of my involvement in sustainable energy, I've been privileged to participate in a number of programs, participate in a number of international reports. So I believe there would be opportunities. Of course, we are not providing jobs. Well, some of the things we want to do, what we hope to be doing in the future, is to see how we can also assist students for internship. And we're already in discussion with a number of international organizations on this. But of course, it's still at discussion stage. But I believe beyond even your country, there are a number of opportunities. There are opportunities for restless youth who are willing to really be very active. So on the second one about the government, yes.
May I add on this second question, Adeleke? On this second question?
Please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. What I would like to add here is I just want to share what is our approach at the UN Environment Office for Africa to create this enabling environment for our students and researchers when they come back to really be able to find jobs. We want to move away from the traditional way of having educated people and then they don't have jobs. So in our approach to engage with the private sector, we also include we want them also to commit to have these students at the outset of the initiative, so that while they are learning, at the end of the day they will be hired by these companies, so that you make sure some of the companies even kind of sponsor the education before they get the diploma. So this way you are sure that when you come back to work with the company. So it's still at the it's still yet to be promoted, but we have started with some of the companies already.
Thank you very much for that. Let me add one last sentence to this. Like you saw in my presentation, I mentioned doing industry relevant research. Now, that's why we are promoting, supporting, advocating that students do their research to make it in such a way that is relevant to the industry. For instance, no company just wants to employ people for employing sake. But if you are there, you have an idea for them. For instance, I look at Nigeria, for instance, and say, oh, there is this challenge with the sustainable energy sector, which was why I did it, literally, actually. And there's a particular problem I identified, and I used my research to address that topic. And because of that, I've interacted with a number of organizations. So organizations want to see that you are bringing something to the table. That's why if you are able to identify even some organizations can sponsor your research, actually. So that's that. The second question about government. Yeah, we're talking to government, a number of, but not particularly dealing with, of course, we are registered with the government. That's not the challenge. I mean, that's not a problem. But in terms of involving people from the government, there are people, some of our mentors who work with ministries in different countries. This is how we want to involve government at this level, particularly on this project. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Let's see, next question is, well, there's actually two questions that are kind of a follow-on to each other. The first question is related to the private sector. And the question is, how do you think, what is the best way for incorporating the private sector in the development of clean energy? And the second part to this question is related to financing. The question is basically asking what kinds of finance models can be used within Africa at both the local and the continental levels in ways that Africans can sustainably finance their energy efficiency without relying on external sources. So you have a little bit of a tension there between those two questions involving the private sector and what kinds of finance mechanisms are available to finance energy efficiency projects at the local level without involving external resources.
Can I try to respond?
Yes, yes, please, thank you.
The first leg of the question is how do we engage with the private sector? What is the best way to engage with the private sector? I think through the presentation we said that, you know, to have the private sector coming on board, we really need to ensure that there is an enabling environment in terms of conducive policies, in terms of incentives, and but also in terms of risk mitigation. At UN Environment Office for Africa, for example, on geothermal, on our geothermal project, we have a third party, which is the Global Environment Facility, which really provides funding to mitigate risk, because, you know, the exploration it is not 100% sure that the exploration will be successful. So the Global Environment Facility provides funding to mitigate that risk for the private sector. In terms of the business model, as I mentioned, Africa really needs to develop business models for enhancing access to finance and resource development risk mitigation solutions that are both responsible and affordable in order to attract viable investments in the energy sector. For example, leapfrog strategies, startups, driven by innovative business models such as pay-as-you-go contracts, affordable technologies such as pico-scale and micro-scale solar photovoltaic, mobile money, and cloud connected wireless communication technology, off-grid power generation using various renewable energy resources are also good examples. I think those are kind of examples that I can share that we also promote here at UN Environment. I don't know, Adeleke, if you can add on that.
No, I think basically those are the emerging new models, because what happens is that the private sector will only come in if there is something in for them. Private sector is not philanthropy. So either there is a finance, because this thing is renewable energy technologies are long-term investments. So they look for instance, if there are grants, if there are long-term loans that can bring down the level of risk, and also ensure that they reap their cost at the end of the project. The life cycle of the project. So those are a business model that has been very helpful for them. Number one. Number two is that there are also global organizations are giving grant to support even implementation of projects, like cutting their costs. For instance, The GIZ is implementing the Nigeria Energy Support Program in Nigeria, and there's I think there's a fraction of the total cost of the project that they give as grants, while the business, the private sector, come in and then take up the other ones, so that will reduce their cost, and then they are able to recoup their cost at the end of the project. But I think as a whole, it can be said that the sector is really emerging and it's very promising with a number of funding opportunities. There are demand side supports, there are supply side supports. So we hope that will really continue, and then till the market is fully emerged.
Great. Very interesting. Thank you. And just a little bit more to follow up on that through another question that came in. Can the two of you speak a little bit to how the reduction of costs related to renewable energy has been driving more investment opportunities in the clean energy sector? As we know, the costs have come down, but if there's any correlations you can speak to related to the reduction in cost and increase in investment in response to those cost reductions.
Sorry, can I get that again?
Yes. Oh, you want the question again? Basically, how the reduction of renewable energy costs, how the costs have come down considerably over time, and have you been able to note an increase in private investors coming to the table to help fund clean energy projects now that the costs are coming down?
Yes, I think the answer is very simple. Is yes. As some of the students also know, this is economics, and it's been really, it's really been seen in Africa, really. As the cost drops, the cost drop is like what I say, the supply side support. The cost drops, and then the people are able to afford that improve affordability. People are able to afford the energy systems. Therefore, people are migrating into sustainable energy solutions because it's now affordable for them. It's becoming more and more affordable. And as demand increases, of course, the market is getting widened and getting broadened. So more players are coming in because investors will only come in when they see that there are demand to which they can respond to in supply. I don't know if I answered that question quickly.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may add, while sharing the various factors that contribute to the high cost of access to electricity, I think I mentioned the political factor, and I think that it is essential. The political commitment is essential to the success of such an effort to really reduce the cost. The political commitment to identify, examine, and implement various low-cost electrification approaches and financing.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and noting the political buy-in as being important is well worth noting. Without that, very little can move forward. Here's a question based on sort of the energy food nexus, I believe. The question is, how is energy research tied into agriculture?
Hello? So how does energy research come into what?
Into agriculture. So what, can you speak to a little bit, I guess, about the nexus between food and energy, how renewable energy is being utilized to grow crops and help, do sustainable farming and things like that?
Yes, there are various interconnections between them, but let me just highlight on one, which is some of the issues we have even we had to tackle here in Italy last week in the training. Now, basically, agriculture, many of course the farms are usually located in the very far distance places in the rural communities, which generally many of them don't have access to the national grid, and of course. Agriculture, in terms, particularly farming, even in terms of rearing animals, use a lot of water. I think the major interconnection between food agriculture and energy has to do with water. Of course, there are other aspects like electricity in the farm area and things like that. But the water, because they need a lot of water for irrigation, they need a lot of water for the animals So pumping this water requires energy. So because these farmlands are not located within most times within where you have the national grid extension, so bringing in sustainable energy in those communities, particularly now that we have solar pumps being distributed all over the places, so there is an interconnection in that regard.
Okay, great.
I don't know if Dr. Juliette has something to add.
Dr. Juliette, are you still there? Hello?
Hello. Okay. Maybe I should also add this. There are a number of examples. There are a number of examples. For instance, there is the biochar technology, which is really emerging. I'm not an expert in it, but I know about the biochar technology, where some part of agricultural produce are being used again to generate energy. So there are a number of interconnections, but I'm not really an expert in the agriculture sector.
Okay. Right. And I do believe we lost connection with Dr. Juliette. So I will I will present this next question to you, Adedoyin, to answer, and see if I can get her back on the line. Okay, this next question is, I'll just read it as it's written. While we are advocating for the per capita consumption of Africa to improve as far as energy consumption is concerned, research is also showing that the advancement in energy is also increasing the poverty level in developing countries due to the cost of supply. What do you suggest can be done to obtain clean, less expensive, and reliable energy to alleviate the poverty trend? So that question
Thank you.
sense.
I think that's a very wonderful question. The thing is, when there are, probably people have been, most of the sustainable energy solutions, particularly in rural communities, have been just to meet residential needs. And when energy is there, of course, the people are happy. This is something I also, my research also caught across. People are happy. Oh, we don't have electricity. Can you please provide us something? And they provide. Once the electricity comes, we don't care. At least just to have something to light the room and the community. They have it, but they're going to be spending a bit more than they used to spend most times, especially when there are no grant supports. So that might be increasing the disposable income they have. However, there is much advocacy about productive use of energy now, such that when development partners and the private companies are sizing their system, they size it and have inbuilt calculated in it that the people are going to be engaging using the power supply, electricity supply for productive activities. So if the people in the community can have access to electricity enough for them to power their businesses, it will increase their income. For instance, people that used to close by 6 p.m. before in their shops will have electricity and close probably by 10 p.m. They make more profit. Therefore, by that, it will not increase the poverty level, it will decrease it.
Okay, good. Let's see. Okay, I think we're coming close to the end of our questions. There are a few more. Adedoyin, this is since we've lost Dr. Juliette and I haven't been able to bring her back into the call. Perhaps you can answer this question. It's a little bit of a follow-up on her discussion around political will. And the question is, in regards to Africa's energy challenges, do you see the challenge as being more of a lack of political will or a matter of misplaced priorities? Like there may be political will there, but it's not a top priority. You know, do you see any tension between those two things?
Political will and misplaced priority. For me, I would not say whether it is this or that, because it's a blend. It's a blend of all of these things. Because if they don't have political will, they are not interested in some of these things. And let me say that no government will not have interest in anything good. It is it is our responsibility as researchers, as professionals in this field, to make them see the good in it. Of course, the government is looking at it. Oh, this thing of a major challenge to sustainable energy solutions is that they always come with high upfront costs. So many people are not like, oh, this is very huge amount of money that we're spending, and it's not reaching as many people as we think. And of course, we know that politicians will always want to do things that will get to more people, especially where the government system is not fine. Either it's quality or not, either it's sustainable or not, but just reach a good number of people for just the political interest. So it is our responsibility as professionals to make them understand through our publications. Like I used to say, there is apart from research, there is research communication and visibility. We must make our research findings visible, our effort as professionals visible enough to convince them. That's why it's good to attend conferences and convince them of the relevance of this technology to their governance, their administration, and to the people. Once they see good in it, they will come into it. So let me link it quickly. If they lack political will, they will not be interested. Therefore, they will divert the resources that would have been used for those things to other things, and then we call it misplaced priority. I wouldn't call that misplaced priority. I would just call it we have not been active enough to make them see the relevance of what we're doing.
Very good. That's a great response. Let's see. Another question that came in, if you have a little more time, is basically looking at, challenges around applying research. So the question is, while there is a lot of research, going on and happening, a lot of times that research is not applied or put into practice. So looking at this through the eyes of ISNAD, do you see some solutions to how the research that's being conducted can actually be put into practice and applied?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, and this is something this is what, like you saw in my presentation, if you had joined earlier, this is one of the objectives of the organization. I discovered that many of the research in Africa are just being conducted, and many do publish, and it ends as publication. What we're trying to do, like you saw in my presentation, I did not speak about it. One, because of time. The other is because we are still working on it. Now, what we plan for mentoring for research, we don't know whether we're going to be able to have the event this year. But once all the people that are selected, or the applicants that are selected for the mentoring for research program, we will organize an annual event. It has that's the sequence: sustainable energy, environment and climate change symposium in an African country annually, where we invite stakeholders from industry, from think tanks, from government, to come and listen to research findings from students. And that's but we're still working on that now, because that's involved with a lot of funding. Now, but apart from that, we're going to support students in various ways to see that they are able to communicate their research when they finish it. Because, like I said, you can do your research in a laboratory and the field work. Nobody who comes to the laboratory to come and check it. It has to be outside there. So various online platforms, various we also have we have a partnership with the international media organization that we can ask students to produce articles from, apart from academic journal. This media organization of renewable energy in the United States, and we help them to publish it there. By that, we're able to reach out to organizations. And again, on the program, we are partnering with a number of international organizations that are also helping us to link out to, reach out to private sectors and think tanks that could also take up some of this research. The only thing I want to advise is this. What matters is, you see, the thing is, when you go to European countries, when you go to American countries, you find that, America and South America and things like that, you find that organizations are funding research. It's not because they are doing philanthropy. It is because the research that are being conducted, they are relevant to what the organization is doing. When you are pitching, when you are framing your research, please frame it in such a way that it addresses a problem. For instance, you meet the MD of a company and you say, oh, you have identified before, when you're setting your research, that this company or this is industry, for instance, it doesn't have to be a company, this industry has this challenge, and you design a solution to it. If you meet the MD of such a company at any opportunity, you are sure that you are going to have a chance with him, because you're talking about solution. Every organization wants to support solution. I don't know if I've been able to address that a little.
Excellent. I think we have addressed all of the questions. I'm just looking at the time and realizing that we're coming to the close of the webinar. There may be a few questions we missed, but if you asked a question and we weren't able to get to it, our outstanding panelists, Adedoyin, if you agree, will be willing to address your question individually through email. Would that be okay?
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
We have the email address to send to, so we'll respond.
Yes, I will have those questions and be able to send. So with that, I just want to close the webinar first by again apologizing for accidentally muting Dr. Juliette during part of her presentation. I'm glad she had time to go back and address the slides that were missed. And as with each webinar, we learn a little something new each time on the technology. So we learn from our mistakes and make sure those types of things don't happen again in the future. But with that, I just want to, again, on behalf of the Clean Energy Solutions Center, extend a very hearty thank you to all of you and our expert panelists for participating in today's webinar. Note that our next one will be on Friday, February 9th, again at 1500 GMT. So we hope to see you back here on Friday for the second in our series of webinars on this very important topic. I'd also like to invite you to check the Solutions Center website, where you'll find many presentations from webinars that I think will be of interest to you as you pursue your pathway and your careers through the clean energy space. We have great presentations from many experts in the field, and we invite you to go to our training page or our YouTube channel to view any of those presentations. They're available free of charge and open to you 24 hours, 7 days a week. So we're happy for you to come and visit our page. So I'm getting ready to end the webinar and would like to kindly ask you to take a moment to complete a short survey that will appear at the end when we conclude the webinar. Your honest feedback is very much appreciated. It helps us understand how we can do things better in the future. So with that, I'd like to wish everyone a pleasant rest of your day, and this webinar is adjourned. Thank you again.